musotalk wird präsentiert von KS Digital. KS Digital baut seit über 20 Jahren Referenzmonitore made in Germany. Und so ist die C-Line in vielen Studios die kompakte Abhörreferenz.
Herzlich willkommen zu musotalk, dem Music- und Sound-Production-Podcast aus Berlin.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von musotalk. Es sind gerade Sommerferien und Non-Eric ist im wohlverdienten Urlaub und deswegen hat er gefragt, ob ich nicht 1-2 Folgen übernehmen kann für ihn, was ich natürlich gerne mache und mir ein paar Leute eingeladen habe zum Talken. Heute die Folge, kurzer Disclaimer, das wird Englisch werden, weil die Person, mit der ich das Interview machen werde, am besten Englisch spricht oder wir beide am liebsten zusammen Englisch sprechen. Es wird aber noch eine andere Folge geben, die wird auf Deutsch sein, die wird auch ganz traditionalistisch sein, da wird es ums Beatmaking gehen. Das werdet ihr auch ein andermal dann sehen. Heute die Folge, wie gesagt, auf Englisch. Welcome. Hello, Ilya.
Hello.
Thanks for dropping by.
Thank you for
after
having me.
Yeah, sure. We sort of had it for you had it coming for years, let's say. I told you I wanna make a podcast with you. Actually, I wanted to make a podcast with you about anything else than music. Well, here we are.
There's a lot to tell. But
there's a lot to tell. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons maybe why this podcast is also in English is because we created our relationship in English. That's how we started. That's how we know each other.
That's true.
So
That's true. That's true. That's actually a huge factor. Possibly also in our relationship. And I just we're already getting sidetracked, but who cares? I just thought about it that actually with most people actually I'm doing music with, they're actually not Germans, and we're in English anyways most of the time, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it says anything about me. Possibly.
Well, I mean, it says what it says about Berlin is what everyone says about Berlin, is that it's very
Sure.
open to music and to music that comes from different places, and that's one of the beauties of this place. So yeah.
Oh.
Well, it is.
Okay, let's jump right into it. You are a musician, sound designer, sound engineer.
Oh, geez.
Did I get the order right? No, I don't. Right?
I've never thought about that, but let's think about it. I think I am first and foremost a sound designer. Then I am a musician, a producer, let's say, and then lastly, I am also an engineer. That is true. Yes.
Producer and musician is like sort of the same thing.
Yeah, I guess so. Today, definitely.
Yeah.
I can't really call myself a musician. In my head, when I think about a musician, I think about a person who has been studying for quite some time. So I am not classically trained in any way, but here I am.
You just can't have it all. So your main profession is sound design.
That is correct.
For me as a musician, mainly as a musician, I don't really know what sound design actually means, because I'm doing the composing, the production, the mixing, the mastering, sort of everything, blah blah blah. But I'm first and foremost the musician, and sound design for me is make it sound nice. But what is it?
So what is sound design? The best way that I can describe it, because I come from a background of I came to music and to music production and to sound design as a result. After spending quite a substantial amount of time painting and drawing, I was actually trained as a as a as a as a painter. Basically, I was studying painting during my years, and the closest analogy that I could find to explain what sound design for me was, it's like I am painting. For me, it's like painting with sounds. For me, it's like sculpting with different sounds and different textures to achieve a certain sonic picture. So yeah, when people ask me what do you do, I just say I paint and I sculpt with sounds, because it's not really music, but I am creating objects, you know. And when I design sound for something, I kind of approach it from a very visual standpoint. Also, when I make music, it's the same story, but it comes very handy with sound design. I look at an object, I see all of its. I can see that a certain, I don't know, automobile has certain metallic parts. There's some rusty parts hanging around, maybe some screws loose here and there, you know, and I'm looking at that image and I'm thinking, like, what is this constructed from? What are the parts in there? There has to be an engine in there too. There has to be an exhaust pipe in there too. Also, maybe some music coming from the inside. All of these things, you just visualize the image in front of you, and then you just try to paint a sonic picture that complements it in a way, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense, and it's that's like so weird. Actually, we never really talked about it like that, which is interesting. It's a very different approach to music, and it's literally designing. You're literally having a designer's perspective. If I compare it to me, I always think about the functional side first. So I'm always bound to harmonies, melodies, and rhythms. And they're sort of like the underlying fundamentals, and I always try to make them work first. But it sounds like you're totally abstracting from that, and you're just focusing on the surface.
Well, I mean, I definitely do not look at sound design. Of course, at music, I look at it from a harmonic standpoint, a melodic standpoint. And sound design, I think that at a certain point, you have to kind of abstract yourself from it. You have to stop thinking of your object as an object that would make musical sense. It can have a rhythm, and it could have a certain melody, but it doesn't really have to make musical sense. One of the things that I've noticed, and since I really know this, I'll explain. So one of the things that I've noticed since I've started making sound design is that, you know, it sounds cliche, but I actually enjoy listening to sounds of motors or trees or like a city ambience, and I perceive it from an enjoyment standpoint, and I sometimes perceive it almost as I would perceive music, because I look at sound, look at the components of a certain sound from a textural standpoint, if that makes sense. So when you look at a table and you see that it's made out of wood, right? Or you I don't know, you look at a certain box and you see that it's out of metal. I look at sounds and I think, okay, this has some white noise in it, and I need to add that texture in there. And this has some distorted bass in it, so I need to add that lower texture there as well. You know, so I enjoy the way these textures play with each other. So I look at it not as harmonies, but more as textures, I would. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about it further. We do have a lot of time left on the clock, but I just gonna need to.
Sure. If you want me to fill it up with sound talk, I can do it. You know,
Sure. That's actually the very reason you're on the show right now. But first, we need to earn some money for Non-Eric.
All right.
he has a sponsor this time around. Once again, it's Hofer College, and Hofer College does a mixing event this time around again. People can apply for it, and I don't know. Seems like Non-Eric wants me to talk about it, but here is the whole deal. And I don't know, Non-Eric, you do have a website here. The link to the Hofer College Song Contest where people can apply. Okay, good. I guess we got all the infos. Let's jump straight back
Into it.
back into it. So for you, sound, or you rather think about sound as textures which you can mix and melt than like a certain functional piece where you can sort of predict, at least partially predict which emotions you will create in people.
Yes, and also because sound design is a lot of the times it's kind of one of its main applications is to accompany a visual image, right? You also, I find so again, to continue the analogy of like painting, it's like, yes, I want to create a certain emotional context, and I will be using certain sounds of a certain frequential content to achieve that, of course. But also, I need to think about things like as you have in drawing, you have the concept of perspective, right? How do I achieve distance in sound? How do I achieve closeness in sound? How do I position certain things inside of a space, right? So if you equate that to would say like, okay, I can achieve frequency, like I can achieve perspective by, for instance, cutting off some high end off some certain sound, putting some space into it, but not just like, make it like, just put a whole lot of reverb on it and just go like, no, it needs to sound real. It needs to sound in a certain space. So I need to always like, I see the image and I need to make it sound in the place where it's supposed to be, in the space that it resides in currently, right? And also there's the moment of, also there's the point of, it's not only that I create a certain emotional context for the listener or the viewer. I also want to look at different sounds that are not conventional and see, basically, I also dissect them into textures, right? When I hear, I don't know, one of my favorite, I guess, go-to sounds is like industrial hums and like factories and, air conditioners and train engines and stuff like that. I always not think about it as a train engine. I was like, okay, where could I stick that specific like frequency content that is in that specific sound? First of all, what can I make out of it if I pitch it down or I pitch it up so I can make it bigger or smaller? How does it sound then? And also like, where can I put this specific, I don't know, refrigerator hum or a train engine that I just recorded or whatever, into a certain ambience of a certain space, for instance, right? So yeah, that's
okay.
that's what it is for me.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking like procedural. Do you have in terms of the production procedure a different approach than I do? Like because or I mean, yeah, you know how I work.
Yeah. I mean, but I think it's a good idea for you to elaborate a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, what I usually do is like I'm starting with a basic set of harmonic melodic ideas.
Mhm.
If I'm doing my own stuff, if I'm
Mhm.
doing someone else's stuff, I'm recording their stuff. If I'm doing my own, I'm laying out my parts, my pieces,
Mhm. Mhm.
trying to find some sounds which work at first.
Mhm.
And then I start the actual producing process where I try to put everything together and
Mhm.
where I sort of make a palette of sounds which are based on the actual composition. And then I do the mixing. Um, but it sounds like you're not starting with a melodic or harmonic idea usually,
No.
pretty often.
That's
Um,
the thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. That's
Since
the
you're not
thing. I
starting with
mean,
that, you're just having totally different process.
yeah. So again, I have to jump back into the visual side of things because this is so.
Mhm.
I mean, I need to think about this because you know these thoughts that are like in the back, you're so used to this way that you're thinking. Now I need to kind of like, okay, I need to analyze it and present you to you it in a certain ways. I'm trying to find the best way to say it, but
Yeah.
I have to jump back into the visual side of things because this is in my blood. This is just, and this is what I apply when I create sounds. For me, even if I don't have an image in front of me, right? Even if I don't
Mm.
have an image of a certain object, so if I'm working on a computer game, like, okay, I need to design a sound for a gun, and the animator or the concept artist, he shows me
Yeah.
they show me the picture of the gun, and then I go through this process that I already described of like, okay, what is this constructed from? What kind of materials are there? What kind of like levers are there? What can click? What can move? You know what I mean? What kind of mechanics are
Mhm.
there? What can I accompany there? Then I realize my imagination, and this is also something that I use for music as well. I actually, if I don't have an image in front of me, I imagine. I first see a picture, and
Yeah.
then I compose sound to that picture in my head. I know that it
Mhm.
might not sound like it makes sense to a lot of people, yeah, but it is a very abstract way of thinking about sound and music in general. But when I, for instance, think about producing a track, if we're talking about producing a
Yeah.
track, right? I see the track as a sequence, abstract movie snippets in my head, right? I imagine, I don't know, like an open field. I imagine outer
Mm.
space. I imagine a certain building. I imagine a certain atmosphere, right? Um, and and I think about it in my own basically associative mind. Okay, for me, what is for instance tension? What is fear? Fear for me is distorted white noise that goes through a reverb, and it sounds like like something like a ghost flowing by, and then you accompany that
Mhm.
with some low sub bass, to really create that tension.
Yeah.
And then you would think for yourself, okay, so what for me is um, a brightness or hope, for instance, right? So it could be a certain, I don't know, a sine wave, also like
Mhm.
reverbed and put somewhere in the back, so that there's something that fear and this darkness that I created, maybe with the white noises and the sub basses, and there's some like very abstract, distant musical like bell going, signaling some hope somewhere in the background, and also that's where like perspective comes in. I really hope that what I'm saying makes sense. But
it makes total sense. I just need to I just need to wrap my head around it, because it's such a different way of thinking about sound. For me, sound always comes in a rhythm and in a harmony, which is, or at least in sort of, it always has a tune, it always has a pitch, and it always has a rhythm.
And for me, it always has texture, it always has perspective, and it always has a certain form, geometric even form, you would say.
Well, what means certain texture, form, surface? What
I said about texture is okay, what kind of frequency content does it actually have in it? Again, so like, do you have deep basses? Do you have white noises? Do you have pink noises? Do you have maybe some like Foley recording of some sand, or Foley recording of some leaves to add a little bit of kind of drenchiness to it, to add some sort of like dirt to the certain element that I'm trying to design sound for.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Sorry?
Okay, some sort of audio connection just dropped for a second. Sorry, could you just like repeat the last 20
Where did
seconds?
you lose me?
Somewhere right in the middle.
No, but what was the last thing I said?
You're lost again.
Okay.
Okay, now you're back on. Okay.
Now I'm back. Okay. So where did you lose me?
You said like you're thinking about the whole frequency range of a.
I'm thinking about a specific. Yeah. So I'm thinking about a specific object that I have in my mind, or when I'm looking at, even when I'm designing like a drum or an instrument, I'm thinking about texture in the sense of, okay, let's try to imagine, and let's try to kind of dissect the frequency ranges of the different like layers of this object. So it's a certain like metallic Foley, for instance, right? It's a heavy object. It's a heavy drum, for instance, right? We have a certain metallic Foley. We get some of those like metallic tones in there. Then I need to add some sub bass into it to make it really heavy, and then maybe I can go back to that metallic Foley and I can pitch it down, because I need to make that object a little bit bigger. I need to make it like it drops, and you can really feel the weight of this bass drum, for instance. And then I want to have some upper content on the top of the frequency range. So instead of just like putting some white noise, how can I make this interesting? So what actually sounds like a little bit of white noise? What crunchy like a sound like white noise, but still has this like more interesting texture other than like, okay, let's take a Foley of some leaves, right? Let's distort them. Let's filter them out so they don't sound so harsh. And then you have something that actually like it functions as a drum, for instance, but it's not your conventional bass drum, right? But it's an object. You can't really put your finger. What is it? Is it a rock covered with leaves that just fell on the ground? Maybe. But one of the things that I like doing, even when I make music, is not to make my like drums, for instance, sound like drums. No disrespect to drummers or any other musicians.
No.
That's just how I do it, But I'm like, when I'm listening to certain drum samples or kicks or snares or whatever, like, I heard this like 1,000 times before, right? Like, and it's great. It's functioning. It does what it's supposed to do. But I'm thinking like, okay, I'm thinking as a sound designer, I heard this drum 1,000 times, like a little bit different, like something that doesn't really necessarily sound like the instrument that it's supposed to be, but it fulfills that function of that instrument. I'm not playing drums. I'm playing a rusty metallic cage, you know, if that makes sense again.
Yeah, it totally makes. Yeah, it's just a very different approach.
Yeah, it's,
Sort of. Yeah, not that I'm not using like unconventional sounds for stuff, but for the most part, I just want to drive it home, like
yeah.
or my or like my fields of experimentation are not the sounds themselves mainly. They're in different areas.
Driving it home times very much be a challenge.
Yes.
Absolutely. With all of this experimentation, like, yeah, you go around, you record a bunch of nails, and then you distort them, and then you put it on top of your kick that's been made out of I don't know, like a cement block that you dropped somewhere. And it was like, but does this work musically? Does this actually, does this make sense musically? Not always. And is it normal that we just spent like 8 hours on it? Also, no, we have a deadline to attend to, and the person who needs this music, or me for that matter, needs a kick drum. So let's just make a damn kick drum, like.
Yeah.
My girlfriend, sometimes she comes here and she listens to the stuff that I do, and there are so many like layers and particles and little like details, just like everything I just said, on top of one drum. And she's like, what are you, I lost you, what are you trying to do? And this is something I struggle with quite a lot. Like, I need to find my focus sometimes. So yeah, you can experiment and go wild and think outside of the box all the time, but you also need to kind of like be very level-headed and at a certain point tell yourself, this is what we're doing. Like,
Yeah.
this is the function that I'm supposed to fulfill right now. Let's get to it. And that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a balance, and it takes it. I'm still learning it.
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
I guess at the end of the day, there's no like final point where you're actually made it. I think it's a constant struggle as a musician or as an artist in general, to, on the one hand, work artistically and trust yourself, your own emotions, and the ideas you just get along the way, and on the other hand, still accept the outside boundaries of the rest of the world and just get something done. A
That's
problem
why
I also have a lot.
I think that's why working on projects for someone, actually, instead of like as opposed, not instead, but as opposed of working on your own album or your own piece of music or your own basic output. There's something very liberating in having a concrete goal in front of you of achieving a certain sound, right?
Yes.
Right now, I'm working with a company. Actually, I'm making music for that company. They are called, it's an Israeli company. They're called Artlist. And they have specific parameters and specific like criteria that they are giving me. And they're saying like, okay, we need this genre and this style current. This is what you need to produce, and this is how it needs to sound. And here's your reference, right? Because they basically have a collection of royalty-free music that filmmakers and whoever else that is interested in that media can just download, and they can use it from their project. There is something so liberating in having a concrete set of like parameters that you need to fulfill after you spent like months and years, as I said, creating abstract drum sounds out of train engines. That it's nice. I like it. It's a refreshing change, and it kind of brings you back into reality within your own music when it says like, okay, I need to use some of that focus that they kind of taught me how to achieve within what I'm doing, and it actually brings out better results in the end in my own kind of art, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it for sure does. Like in many ways, it's much easier to contribute your own work to someone else's product than building the whole thing yourself. Definitely. But congrats that you landed the gig with Artlist. Actually, I knew you were
Thank
doing
you.
that, but I didn't know that it was Artlist actually.
Yeah, it was.
That's something. That's really something. And I know quite some filmmakers and cutters who are seriously using that. So you're gonna be in a bazillion films pretty soon.
I hope. I don't know.
I expect you to.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just as an example for yeah, like you said, contributing what you're doing to someone else's work. It gives you, I think it's a bit of a when you spend enough time working on your own stuff, and I think a lot of musicians and a lot of sound designers, a lot of beginning sound designers, a lot of beginning musicians know what I'm talking about. You spent months and years working on your own stuff, developing your own style, searching for your own style, creating music, creating track after track after track after track. If you're a sound designer, you have some piece of footage because you want to get into the game industry and you're trying to redesign the sound for that, and you're doing all of this out of your own mind, out of your own imagination, right? And you come across the thoughts like, okay, well, will someone understand it the same way that I currently understand it when I create it? Or is this necessary for someone at all? Would someone actually find this useful? After you spend years doing that, like creating out of your own imagination, out of an abstract, creating something that is concrete, which is one of the beautiful things about creation, music, and about drawing and whatever other art form, that someone actually comes to you then and says, you know what, that thing that you've been creating out of the depths of the dark depths of your own mind that only you know, I'm interested in that, and I want you to make something like that. Or I know that if you can create that stuff, then you can create stuff for us as well. There is something, in my opinion, very liberating about it. So sometimes people who have an artistic career want to be professional musicians or artists. So people who produce their own music and they put it out there in albums and EPs and whatever the hell. And then they start working for more, let's call it commercialized projects, right? Or they start, applying their skills to the benefit of someone else to kind of complement someone else's work. Some people might say like, oh, you've gone commercial, or, oh, I mean, you need to focus on your music full time and that's it. You have your own artistic output out there all the time. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there's something very liberating as opposed to limiting in these boundaries that they set to you when they want to commission a piece of work for you. I think that if someone out there is conflicting with that, should I go into game music? Should I go into film music? Should I go into game sound design, film sound design, whatever it is, making music for commercials? Yes, absolutely. Do it. Do it because it will, first of all, I think after years of like squeezing your own imagination for output, it will be very liberating and easy. It's like a breath of fresh air sometimes. And at the same time, it will up your own game and what you're doing for your own self in so many levels, because you'll have to also uphold yourself to a certain standard. You can't just like do whatever it is that you want to do. Like you're not like a kid playing with Legos anymore. You need to construct a certain piece. That's a skill that needs to be learned, I think. Yeah, it takes time.
Totally on your side. Totally on your side. That's what I saw and what I experienced myself. It just comes both ways at the end of the day, and you're not losing your artistic credibility just because you're doing something for someone else.
Absolutely.
Actually, quite the opposite. But yeah. Since you already mentioned it a few times, the gaming industry. you said you talked about the gaming industry and how to get in there, or that one might want to get in there. What's the deal with that?
What's up with that? With all them like games and stuff, man. So I have to make a little disclaimer, and I gave you this disclaimer a few times before we went on this podcast, just for the sake of being completely transparent. When it comes to games, I cannot be considered an authority on the subject of how to get into the game industry or game sound design, because actually I've used the time we had in the pandemic, right, to hone my skills in that field. It's a field that I always wanted to get into, and over the past 2+ years, that's what I've been doing. I've learned how to actually implement sound into computer games, and I was actually lucky enough to start working on a project. And what can I tell you about how to get into the computer game industry? Not a lot. From the perspective that I currently see, and it doesn't always have to do even with computer games. It can be any type of project that you want to be doing. First of all, even if what you're doing is not completely related to games, for instance, just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep producing your music. Keep producing your sounds. Keep doing it. Have content out there. Have things for people to see. And then when you have this content, put that content in a place. That means if you have like a SoundCloud account, put it in there. You have a Vimeo that you want to make a show reel out of it, put it out there. You want to have a website, an Instagram account, whatever it is, put it out there. That's actually what I'm doing with my Instagram account. I hear visions, one word. This will also help maybe the listeners understand what that whole thing that I'm just talking about with like textures and sound and how I see sound. That will actually help them maybe understand what the hell it is that I'm talking about, or what the hell it is that I'm doing that I'm calling sound design. But the point is, so why did I create this Instagram account? Because I needed my content and my visual language, my sonic language, the way that I perceive sound, the type and the tone of the projects I'd like to be working on, it is all shown there. Once you have a body of work that shows the type of content that you want to work on, the type of artistic like tone that you can give a certain work, right? Be it in music or in again as a sound design or music for visuals, right? Once you have that well of like content, then you can just like go and you can say, here's what I do. Let me know what you think, because I might want to work with you. Or if you could please take me so I could work with you if it's something that you're really, looking up to. And have it in an accessible place, because people are not going to scour the internet looking specifically for you and for your whole stuff. And like, who is this magical guy that I met in this meetup that tells me that he's so good and he likes drum and bass and deep basses and he loves Star Wars? I don't think anyone cares about that. They want to see what you got. They want to see your language, want to see it in an easy, accessible place. So first of all, create your well of content that you can then easily share with other people. Right? Also, luck is opportunity plus preparation, right? So if someone comes to you and they say like, they meet you somewhere like, oh, really? You make music, right? You make, that's what you do, right? Like, yeah. All right. You got something? I was like, yeah, sure. Like, here it is. Boom. And they view it and they come back to it. This is how I landed my first gig as a sound designer for a street theater. Like 3 horribly mixed tracks on not even SoundCloud, MySpace. Horribly, like really, I was just getting the hang of it, and there was just this guy this director that I met, theater director, and he said, "Oh yeah, really? You do some music?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if you want to call it music, but I mean, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, yeah, show me." Like, okay, sure, why not? So I showed him, and then like a few days later, it was like, any chance you can come to, any chance you can do this and that for us, you know? So it can come from anywhere. You just need to have this kind of content ready. And when it comes to computer games, the way to get into that is, again, get your well of content ready first, right? Second, you need to understand what kind of tools are being used as standards of the industry. Let's say when you want to implement your sounds into a computer game, because from what I know so far, again, from what I know so far, and there might be some game sound designers who listen to this who will refute what I'm saying. Totally acceptable. I understand this. But from what I know so far, nobody's gonna also like, if you want to work professionally on it and you have a project and a concrete deadline, you need to know about middleware. And what is middleware? Middleware is basically what connects your DAW to the game engine where your game is the game itself is being created. The middleware is like the bridge from the output of your DAW output, in the sense of the content that you create in your DAW, not direct output, to the game engine, and how the game engine can put those sounds within itself and implement it into the game. So those are programs that basically help you play sounds on a specific. You shoot a gun, you make a footstep, right? And then they would play that sound, and then they need to play it every time that a certain trigger is played. And the program that I mainly use currently, WIs, we'll get to that maybe a little bit later if you want.
Yeah.
Those triggers are called events, and every time that the game engine sees that the character basically makes a footstep or shoots a gun or something is happening, anything that's supposed to emit sound is happening, it basically sends an event to WIs, which is the middleware. And in WIs, you already have ready-made like the WAV files of the content, the audio content that you created in your DAW earlier. And it says like, okay, when this event, shoot gun, is being sent from the game engine, I want you, WIs, to play this WAV file that you prepared specifically for that function, for that animation, piece of animation in the game. And it does a lot more than that. So when you have a lot of footsteps, for instance, or gunshots, so it's not like make the same sound like it sounds monotone, it sounds unnatural. So you can randomize these sounds and put them in a single container. They can put like 20 gunshot samples, and then it randomizes them. And also when it randomizes them, you can tell it to also randomize the pitch of those samples, so it sounds more kind of natural, and it varies within itself, right? So that's like one of the most basics that Wise does, right? Another thing that it does is that you, at the end of the day, you also want to use it for music. So when you are thinking about music for video games, again, there are 1,001 approaches to this. I can only speak from my own experience. When we're making music, when we are making a musical piece, we're usually thinking of a certain narrative, right? You have a certain linear fashion in which things are evolving and changing and overcoming to a certain cadence, a certain conclusion, right? When you have music for video games, the thing is, you are no longer the conductor. The conductor is actually the player, right? You are no longer the composer. The composer is actually the player. And what do I mean by that? You need to create music that adjusts itself to the actions in plural that the player is. Sorry about that. That the player is. I'm excited. That the player is that the player is making in the game. So, for instance, if a player finds themselves in a very kind of dangerous situation, they're surrounded by enemies, they need to kill or take care of, to use a gentler word, take care of a lot of enemies, right? And they are low on their life, right? That means that they're in a very dangerous situation. That means that the music needs to be instantly very intense, very full of action, very, like, I don't know, drum heavy or something like that, right? And then they, all of these enemies, the battle arena where they are, the level where they are is empty. Things are now quiet down. You can't keep going with like, no, you just need to quiet down now, right?
Yeah.
So then, like, instantly it needs to switch to a very quiet segment of that same piece that you like composed for that level, but also that it would make musical sense, that the transition would make musical sense. And so when creating a musical piece for a lot of times, you need to make that consideration. Just as when I'm thinking about sound design, I'm thinking like, okay, what kind of parts is that thing that I'm trying to make sound for is composed from? When I'm making music for a computer game, I'm thinking like, what kind of situations can the player land themselves in? Is it dangerous? Is it sad? Is it dark? Is it light? Is it very, very, is it a stealth game? Does there need to be tension all of a sudden? And then you can, like the way that I worked on this project that I'm working right now on, with my partner, Marcus Gimbachka, a very, 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 I cannot say this enough, a very talented sound designer, very talented, and a person that I managed to find a mutual language with, which I really appreciate, because it's rare to find kind of like such fluid mutual language when you're creating with someone. And Marcus, you're awesome. So yeah. So when we are working on this thing together, we actually compose a certain musical piece, but then we also always need to think about like, okay, we created a certain motive, we created a certain harmonic motive or a melodic motive. Now let's think of the different situations that the player can land themselves in. And let's think like, okay, so this very dense composition with a lot of drums would be our intense part. And then let's take a few things out of it and let's put that in the quieter part. Or we composed a different segment of the same composition specifically for the quiet part, but you also need to keep in mind that it needs to crossfade seamlessly into a very intense thing. So when we were working on this game, for instance, the first track that we had, the first track for the first level, was like, breakbeat metal, smack my bitch up, like Prodigy style, the stuff that we kind of like, Prodigy, Noisy, or whatever, and we really to it, and then like we put on the artistic hat, and he said, you know what, when it comes to the quiet part, let's slow down the BPM from like 140, let's slow it down to like 90. I was like, yeah, because it's like less intense, and then it has to slow it down, and it's very excellent, very nice idea, very original. But when you want to crossfade a 90 BPM segment of a quiet part of your game to a very intense 140, which is like full-on drums, because from any minute you can be in a very good situation, and then in a very intense situation, let's just say I had a really big headache when I tried to kind of create that crossfade. I managed to do it, but when I was implementing it into the game, but those are things that need to be taken into consideration. So over time, when we continue constructing the music, we learned that we need to have segments of the composition for each one of the specific situations that can be encountered in the game, and we need them to work together well. And the last thing that I will say about this is that one of the most important things that you can think about when you're working on sound design for a game, or when you're working on a music for a game, or any collaborative project with other forms of media for that matter, you cannot stay in your box and say, I'm the musician, I'm taking care of the music, that's all I do, that's all I care about. I just care about my little musical, like not little, but I care about my musical narrative that I'm building here. And I think that it fits into the game. No, you need to constantly be in contact with the other parts that are working on this game. So you need to talk to the developers, you talk to the animators, and you need to talk to the concept artist, right? So for instance, to create this system of music, the developer had to work with us together and to create a situation where the game's engine would send the signals that would tell the game, okay, now it's like medium dangerous, now it's like high level dangerous, now it's medium quiet, now it's very quiet, so you always need to be in constant dialogue with the other departments of the game. Otherwise, you won't get far. What I'm trying to say is communication skills are, I would say, 55% from what I know so far. Really, 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 really.
Yeah. I would say that's like in general in the music industry as well. That communication is key. Maybe the same like in life in general. You just can't avoid it because you're just never on yourself. Or just only on yourself. So you're always in touch with other people. Even more in something like a video game. What people, I think, tend to forget that there are story writers for a video game who, the same like in film, script such a game, and they're pretty often also real directors. And it's in a certain sense, doing the sound for a video game is like doing the sound for a movie, although
Movie
it's very
with
as you said.
countless ways in which something can branch out. It's beautiful, really, in my opinion.
So in your daily work for video games, you're having for the game you're having the engine running, you're having the bridge running, and you're having your DAW running at the same time, and you're also having, I don't know, like your Slack running to stay in touch with the whole team.
My computer basically sounds like the ICE, or a rocket. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But I mean, you don't have most of them running at the same time, but you tend to like jump between them all the time. Like another example that I can give you, when you've implemented everything and when you've told the middleware trigger this at this event and trigger that at that event, and everything technically works, right?
Yeah.
Now it's time to mix it. How do you mix it? Well, and you have a lot of things to mix because you have ambience and you have music and you have gunshots and you have characters and you have like so many other things, and scoreboards also, right? Like all these think, like when you win something or whatever. How do you mix it? Well, for instance, Wise has a function where it connects directly into the game engine, and you can actually mix. So the game is running on an engine, and then basically the sounds that the events are triggering from Wise are being shown back in Wise, and then you see all your levels basically of everything that's going on, and that's how you basically mix it while actually like playing the game. It can sound challenging, and it is, but you need to have 4 arms. But another way that I did it is that I actually used like a YouTube tutorial. I don't remember even where did I see it, but it was an interesting like concept that I wanted to test. They say that basically, I told you about this also once. Basically, if you want to see that your mix is properly balanced, which you want to try and do, you want to use a pink noise reference and overlay it over the over your mix. And if your mix is still audible through that pink noise, that means that you're in a very good place balance-wise in your mix. This is something that I used a lot when I was mixing. And then at a certain point, I also started playing it and listening to it while it was being played. So yeah, you constantly, the way that the workflow usually goes is that I personally start with I create the sounds themselves in the DAW. I use a combination of Propeller Head Reason and Reaper. I use Propeller Head Reason because I have been using it since 10 years old. I love this program. I know it like the back of my hand. And I love the fact that it's very open to experimentation. There's a lot of possibilities of routing and rerouting. If you're familiar with the software, you can reroute patch cables and audio cables to different devices, and kind of it's a virtual, very hands-on approach into patching up your own synthesizer or signal chain. And it allows for instant experimentation, which is something that I love. I create those sounds mainly in Reason with the help of definitely material from either things that I've recorded myself, like with my Zoom. It could be ambiances. Again, it could be engines and stuff like that, the stuff that I told you about before. Or it can be things from a sound library. And then you compile all of it and you create those sounds. Once you have those sounds ready, I usually use Reaper to handle audio editing on it. And then Reaper has a lot of benefits. I know, Mika, that you yourself are a Reaper fanatic. And from you, I understood that the depths of... Yeah, it so happens. Yeah. And I am, compared to, I guess, what you're doing, I'm taking complete baby steps in this program. But there are a few things that I really love about Reaper. For my own personal purposes, first of all, is the audio editing functions that are very the workflow with audio editing, WAV files and stuff like that. It's super quick. I love it. And also, there's one feature in Reaper that it kind of made me understand why a lot of sound designers use it, and a lot of the game industry actually also use it. The region export matrix is a wonderful, wonderful creation where you can basically designate a bunch of regions on your timeline, and for each region export specific channels that are within that region. And when you're working as a sound designer and you're thinking about layers of sounds, you've layered them over multiple channels, and you want to maybe mix some of them differently, or you want the full sound at one point, but then only if that same sound at another point, this is a lifesaver. So for me as a sound designer, using the region render matrix was amazing.
And it's not, sorry, just to jump in there, it's not just like in other programs where you, of course, you can also batch render stuff. Yeah. But it's not just rendering certain tracks at certain regions. You can run it multiple times and can tell it, do it in mono, do it in stereo, do it in multi-channel. Apply certain effects or don't apply them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Render them in certain different formats and put them in certain different places on your hard drive. And you can all just do it in one run. So it can save you hours of clicking on and off buttons and copying files from one place to the other, just in the hope you finally made it all right. And to find out somewhere along the line you just missed either one file or you accidentally left a mute button on.
And it's free, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is it?
It's not free.
I bought it so long ago. I bought it back when I was living in Israel, and I just forgot even that I bought it at a certain point.
You do have a test version, but it's like compared to every other DAW, it's ridiculously cheap.
So again, for someone who wants to start with sound design, or they want to start with they want to start with video game sound design or even music creation, whatever it is, get Reaper for the, I don't know, $60 that it costs, or something like that. And there are so many free tools. Also, there's Vital, which is like an amazing free alternative to Serum that I'm sure people already know about it.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's my favorite synthesizer, actually.
Yeah, it's amazing, and there are so many free tools right now. And if you want to get the hang of it, you can start working with Reaper. And then, if you're just new to the world of DAWs, for instance, right, or music production or sound design, gateway, because then at the end of the day, DAWs and their interfaces are similar. They're similar. I mean, once you get the hang of one or two, you kind of like you go to a new one. And that's how I figured Reaper, right? I'm used to Reason for music and Pro Tools for post production for film or like visual media. I'm looking at Reaper and it's like, okay, yeah, some things are not really where I want them to be, and it can be customized if you want it to, of course. UI design, Mika.
Just a side hustle.
Yeah, but it helps you get the hang of other pieces of software as well, and a lot of like game studios, for instance, use it because of its flexibility, I imagine. So yeah, it's a really great gateway. The availability of like free tools out there, free synthesis tools out there is amazing.
Yeah.
You can also, like, if you don't have a Zoom device, you can. I recorded myself beatboxing with an iPhone a few years back, and I was surprised at the audio quality. Like, you can even like record your own stuff like with an iPhone when you I don't know, you hear like an engine sound that you like or whatever, or a tree or whatever it is. Just record yourself, put it out there, put it in the DAW, see what you can do with it. It doesn't have to sound like $1,000,000, but just do something with it. The end idea is what's important. So a lot of ways to start.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
True.
Yeah.
All right. I got the feeling that pretty much wraps it up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Or you have like more to say?
Well, now is the time that you do the stuff that you do at podcast, don't you? So if you want to find me on Instagram, I am at I Hear Visions. That is the word I and then HEARVISIONS. I Hear Visions.
Okay.
And then
Can you please repeat? Your connection just tripped for a second.
that's a beautiful time for it to trip, right? Just when I'm plugging myself. Instagram
Okay,
in one word.
Now you were off.
Oh my god, someone really doesn't want me to promote myself. All
Go
right,
for
do
it.
it now.
I believe in you. Yeah.
Okay. I Hear Visions on Instagram. That is IHEARVISIONS. I Hear Visions in one word. And then my website, www.ilyagertman.com. Ilya Gertman also in one word. You can find my music there. You can find my musical project that I'm. That's my main musical project, NUTE, and the album is called Bad Transmission. You can find it on Spotify. The game Paws of Steel is still in development by a lovely company called Primordial Pouch. When it will be out, you will be able to find it free on Steam. And what else is there? I have an album coming up. Hopefully, I will finish it in October. So yeah, and if you want to work on projects together or make music together or whatever it is, hit me up.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
No interruptions there. Run super smoothly, and people will find their ways to you, I guess. Yeah, thanks a lot, Ilya. It was a really,
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
really nice and interesting show. And it was as lovely as always with you.
Likewise.
It's just a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, thanks for taking your time.
Thank you for having me.
Showing up. And we probably gonna talk soon again.
Definitely.
Okay. Last but not least, thanks to all the listeners and visitors that you managed to get to the end of the show. I hope you got some insights here, especially about sound design and video game music, sound design, production. The next show will be in German. The next show with me will be in German again. All the other shows are in German anyways, I guess. There's something coming this summer. And yeah, have a good time. Thanks. And thanks to Non-Eric for still running the show.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, appreciate it.
Ciao and goodbye.
Ciao, ciao.